Hey, happy Monday, everybody. It's 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and you're right here with Paranormally Blonde, right here on KUNX, the UNX network, the new mainstream. Hi, Dee Dee.
Hi.
Happy Monday. Here we are. It's Monday again.
Yeah.
Right? Like I feel like again, weeks are clicking by, and now
Hey, we had 2 weeks.
yeah, 2 weeks, and it's pitch black. Right. We were just talking before the show. I am no longer allowed to leave the house after 5 o'clock because I can't see in the dark driving. So I got to get everything done before 5. How was your Halloween?
Good. It was fun.
Yeah.
I ended up doing a little ghost hunt, even though I wasn't supposed to. I was at a party and then it came up.
Those are the best ones though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't set that expectation. It just sort of happens. And did you get anything good?
I'm still trying to get everything from my phone over, but one of the complaints was that there was tapping.
Okay.
And when I was up there by myself doing some EVPs, sure enough, there was tapping, and I could not figure out where it was coming from.
Oh.
I had a cat scare me. I was like doing a really, I was in a section that was like really like ominous, and the cat said, I know there was a cat there, and all of a sudden, oh meow, freaked me out. But I mean, the things that she told me, that it's real. I mean, there's some energy in there, just in 2 rooms, and it's really strange.
And you're going back to continue this, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I love that. Well, hopefully you can share it. Now, I know it's a private residence, so we don't like to give too much out on private residence, but perhaps you can give us a little, if there's anything kind of big that you can share without giving away names and situations. Per se. Did you guys catch the KUNX? They had their big birthday celebration on Halloween. Did you guys stay for the live? I believe Mr. Jimmy Church was hosting that alongside Margie and Race, and they had a little fun kind of going over all the shows. If you did see it, you saw the Blondes had a little spot there that we pre-recorded. And then I was over on the Get Haunted channel doing the Locked Down Live. Did that? I am so glad, awesome. Dee Dee, that you came on. And right when you did, I was only going to host between 8 and midnight, and I stayed on until 2:30.
Yeah, it was late. Yeah, at least 2. Yeah.
So we know now that Sarah's hosting ends about 6 hours. 6 hours is about as long as I can go. But it was a fun night, and some very interesting challenges that were thrown out to the investigators. It was a lot of fun. So that was Halloween. Halloween's changing when your kids grow up, and it just sort of morphs and
but you still enjoy it differently.
But you still enjoy, you find new ways. Let's say some hellos off to the side here. We have our Get Hunted family. We have Danny and Rob and Kyle and Sean. Hey guys, I believe I saw Michael here. I'm gonna scroll down here. All the pre-show stuff is awesome. There's Kyle, there's Michael, and Travis. Hey Travis. So it's November, and we've got some fun stuff coming up. Tonight's guest, we're going to have a lot of fun. I'm so excited. And we have one of our favorite psychic mediums, Mr. Brett Karsten's coming back on. So that will be fun. And I mean, we were just talking about this. I just did my first Paracon. And I mean, I was a guest. I wasn't at a vendor table or anything, but did get to go and walk around these Paracons. They're very interesting. I will say it is a very interesting. So I think if you've never been, you should go to one.
Yes, I agree.
You should absolutely go to one. This one was the Mid-Michigan one. It is, hey, Melissa. It's probably a medium size, I would think. I have nothing to compare it to. But I know we have the MyCon, which is up in Sault Ste. Marie, and that's the big daddy of all Paracons.
Okay.
So this one I think is probably a medium size one. And it was a 1-dayer. So it's very interesting. And it is interesting to see, there were like a lot of production people there, like I guess people who just produce paranormal videos per se. They have their drone set up. I wasn't quite sure what I was supposed to do with those tables, so to speak, because it's like, you have your drone set up, but lots of teams, lots of vendors, and some I guess the paranormal celebrities. I don't know, but I will say I got to meet Dale from High Spirits Paranormal Windsor, and John Michael. Nicest guys, or Michael John. I feel horrible. My memory. nicest guys, I will say, thank them. I want to thank them personally because they were somebody that came up to me and they were so kind and introduced me to some people. So thank you for being kind souls, because, you know, I've never been to one. And when you're by yourself, it's like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing in this? You know, it's it's overwhelming. It's very overwhelming, but there's some great stuff out there. And of course, I can't get away from buying merch. It always
so like your first merch. Post, what you bought.
It's like, what's there to buy? I mean, that's the first thing, you know, everybody's like, okay, what's our limit here? What are we going to say the limit is tonight? Because I can't walk out with 50 t-shirts and right. I was actually shocked there was no equipment. There was no equipment to buy. Huh. I don't know why that shocked me. Lots of stickers though. And we know I love my stickers. So there was lots and lots of stickers. So tonight we are going to have some fun. We have the beautiful Miss Cardsy B with us tonight. Hi, Cardsy.
Hey, ladies.
So you got 3 blondes tonight. So what's better on a Monday night than 3 blondes? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Cardsy, you are... It is so much fun to I follow you strictly on Instagram. You are so much fun. And I'm going to keep it real here, people. I'm really almost so giddy. Cardsy said she found us in the spring via Spotify and loved us. And she reached out and was like, I would love to be a guest. And I like, you're a big deal. Hex in the City podcast. Like, people, please go check this out. You're going to love it. You're an influencer and you're an amazing card reader.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Well, you know what? I just love, I think that what we do is very similar, and we're both in industries that people are highly skeptical of, and you guys are so much fun. And I think it's working in an area that has a lot of stigma around it, a lot of, you know, shadow cast on it. And what you guys do as well is kind of putting puzzle pieces together to help heal and empower. And that's what I do with my clients and with my energy updates and my podcast and the tarot. So I think we work very similarly. And I just love the way that you host your podcast and the way that you go into really intense topics, but bring a lot of light and a lot of levity to it at times.
Got to keep it balanced, right? Yeah. Like, I think sometimes we get a little too serious about who we are. And I know for myself, and Dee Dee, I don't know, like, you know, we all like to listen to different things, but if something's just so serious, I can't, it's too much.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, even within our own personal lives, when something is a little bit sad or hard or heavy to carry, right? If you can't have those moments to laugh, like, you would break. So, you know, and then when you take yourself too serious, I think sometimes we just have to learn to, right? You got to laugh a little. You got to keep it a little light here and there, because these are very heavy and dark. They can be very dark topics.
Yeah.
And we can take it to that point, I think, especially in paranormal. Now here's the thing with card reading too, right? People really hang on every word you say, correct?
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think that it's one of the things that I always explain is the way that I read. I know everyone reads differently. And I'm sure, like, I know you guys have a lot of psychics on the program as well. I get a lot of messages and I kind of organize them the most clearly through the cards. And I'm known for seeing timelines accurately. So sometimes I once in a great while get messages from loved ones from the other side, but I'm not necessarily like a medium. The way that I read is kind of seeing the most probable timelines based on the energies that are coming through. And sometimes those do come through messages from loved ones, but it really, to me, is always the person's kind of higher self that's guiding this. And so I'm known for predicting accurate timelines on things like, you know, finding love, having deals close, people getting pregnant and coming back to me and being like, oh, it was 5 weeks to the day that I met that person, was super single, got engaged within months, exactly like you said. And usually people are skeptical of some parts of the messages. And I love when they come back and tell me that they're, you know, that these things occurred, because there's no way of showing that until you just let things play out in your day-to-day life. But I think much like what you guys do, in paranormal investigation, it's a lot of, I mean, there are definitely things I've studied in astrology and more, I guess, technical aspects to astrology and studying numerology and the Kabbalistic tie-ins with the tarot. But most of it is very intuitive, obviously, and trusting that as you're working. And I think that has helped me throughout so many other aspects of my life, and really like just letting the what's being channeled come through and trusting it.
Okay. So how long, okay, let's go with the very basic question, Cardsy. Like, when did this all sort of start for you? You seem so young and like,
oh my God, you guys are angels. I'm turning 40 next month. So,
oh, you're a baby. Oh, please. You're a baby. You're a baby. But when, like, how did this sort of become, like, how did you become Cardsy B? I mean, Rebecca was Rebecca, and were you always, did you have this piece of you that was always there? Or?
So, okay, this is interestingly enough, I am not like one of the, because I know there's a lot of people that work in my space that are like, oh, I'm a second or third generation healer.
Okay.
It was nothing like that. I came from a very small town in central Pennsylvania. You guys are probably very familiar with how haunted that area in Pennsylvania is, because I'm from right between Lancaster and Gettysburg. So even as a little girl, I would see, sense, and hear things that other people didn't hear. I was very drawn to tarot and astrology specifically, and I would save my allowance money at like 10, 11 years old, buy tarot decks, buy astrology books. I loved Ed and Lorraine Warren's books back then. And this was something that like no one in my family, my parents were luckily open-minded enough that they were kind of like, okay, well, at least she's reading, you know, she's like saving her money for books, her allowance money for books. But it wasn't something that I was taught in like, you know, my family that I was born into or anyone that I knew. It was just something I was always drawn to. And back then in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't as cool as it is today. It was kind of hidden in the back little occult section. It wasn't even glamorized as like new age or new thought. It was like you had to be brave to go back to that little like dark corner of the bookstore. So it was something I was just always drawn to. And my parents would always tell me when I was a kid that I was very sensitive or very high maintenance because I would hear things. And that's why I'm very, very intrigued with the work that you do, because I haven't necessarily like done a ton of work in paranormal investigation, but I have in the way that I receive messages, would sense things in places that I lived. And I remember even being in the car with my parents and being like, I don't like to go this way as a little girl. I'm like, bad things happen here. And they would just be like, oh, she's so dramatic. You know? So I started to understand that more the older that I became. But I think I fell out of it around my teenage years, because back then, and like I said, in the 90s, it wasn't a cool thing. There weren't like tarot and crystal shops all around. And I tried to fit in with kind of like what was popular back then, and didn't come back to it until later in my adult life. So I worked in fashion. That was, I was in Manhattan for 15 years. I'm now in Miami, but I worked, I designed for Donna Karan, for Nike. I was the creative director of Playboy. Had my own lingerie line, like the whole Carrie Bradshaw life, you know? And then I had this very intense dark night of the soul in 2017 that was, you know, years in the making, but went through a divorce. My best friend passed away of HIV related complications. Basically lost all of my money. I was pushed out of my big corporate job. My divorce was expensive. And then through a series of events, like in my lingerie line, was just like living just like at a very, very minimal level in a 350 square foot apartment with like rat holes and cockroaches. And like, it was the bottom of like what I'd experienced as an adult, and hit this like bad suicidal depression. Had planned to just tap out of this lifetime through a sequence of events. Obviously I'm here. But that's when the messages started coming back, and I had shut them down for so long. And I was a heavy drinker and a partier, which being in fashion in New York, you can get away with as the norm. I mean, in retrospect, like I gave Lindsay Lohan a run for her money, but like back then it was like, everyone's doing this. Like, that's right. You know, this was my scene in my life. But especially as I stopped drinking, the messages started coming through really intense. And I started pulling one tarot card a day, because at the time when I had very little money whatsoever, it was a free tool. And I was like, this is something that used to give me access to my intuition and kind of what I needed to know in terms of what the universe was showing me, and started pulling it for myself. And then there were certain friends that knew that I had this, you know, this gift and had done it when I was younger, pulling for friends, doing it for former colleagues in the fashion industry. And then word got around that like, she's really good at this. She predicts things that happen. And people were then paying me, and I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm making some money on this. I need this. Started reading in small spaces in Manhattan. And then it turned into a thing. and then was, launched a kind of somewhat proper reading practice, and created my own tarot deck of like, it's all like iconic women. So this is like, this just happens to be on the bottom, like Justice is RBG, like the Hierophant's Oprah, because it's the teacher of life lessons, aha moments. So created my own deck that was kind of a teaching tool that got published and came out in 2018. My podcast Hex in the City came out, I think, in 2019. And I've just been doing this full time since then. I never expected that my nickname from my friends of Cardsy B for being a card reader or would be my full identity, and that I would be doing this every day. But I love it. It's like, you guys, this is such a passion for me. And I get so excited that this is what I get to help people and empower people in this way. And this is now my full-time role. So it wasn't planned. Definitely didn't foresee this when I was younger, but I'm so grateful that this is my life.
Holy hell.
Love this story.
That is amazing. Do you have a book, Cardsy? Like,
I do. Oh my God, that was a perfect plug. I have a book. It's not out yet. It's coming out 12/12.
Okay.
It's called The Saturn Diaries, and it's half memoir, half spell book. So it's literally this crazy true story of how I became Cardsy B, and kind of went through my dark night of the soul and all of the healing tools that I used along the way. So everything from elixirs to actual spells that I created and used. Like, this is a spell at the end of a chapter. Okay. So all the spells are in black, and then the memoir part is
set to a side. Paranormally Blonde will take 2. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I see the beautiful pink on the side.
I did.
Yes.
I need that.
Beautiful.
I need that.
Totally pink pages on the tips on the side, and then like a little pink bookmark. But the chapters are all in white, and then the spells are segmented at the end of each chapter in black. So it's something that came up through the chapter of like a spell, elixir, and a ritual that helped me heal through that dark night of the soul until getting to the other side. And that's why it's called a modern day grimoire, because it's half memoir, half spell book. But the initial people I were working with, they're like, no, you have to pick a lane. It's a memoir or it's a spell book. And I'm not really good at, I'm not really good at like doing things formulaically. So I was like, no. And I found a publisher shortly after I moved to Miami, and we just like hit it off. She was like, I love that. I think you should keep it exactly as it is. And it worked out. So it's coming out 12/12. Everywhere books are sold, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, bookshops, all of that. But I will happily send you guys a copy. I'm so flattered. We need to do like a book club on this one. Like, we need 2 Blondes for book back. Go back into talking about, and we'll have you come back and we'll go over some stuff in that book, Cardsy. I love that. Okay, but you said something, first of all, just so you know, you've got half of Pennsylvania right on the side there in the chat. That is the Pennsylvania crowd. They are all like Easton, Bethlehem. Like all that area. So you said something though, as you were talking about sort of your dark night of the soul, and you were kind of going through your stuff. How do you feel about, because I feel like when you listen to a lot of podcasts or shows or people who share their stories, and especially in paranormal, it seems like after something, either an addiction rehab or, really going through, even if you didn't have to go through rehab, but maybe you were really kind of dependent on alcohol or a drug, they really tend to feel like that really sort of heightened something that they had, or it was a gift to get them out of the dark. How do you feel that really plays in? Do you think it plays into it, or do you think it's just a happenstance? I think that, I've heard that from many people, clients and friends, as well as myself. So I think absolutely there's there's a strong correlation there. I know that was the case for me. And I know that a lot of what I perceived as anxiety, and even as a little kid, like hearing, sensing, feeling things that were not being validated. And my parents are very loving and amazing. They just couldn't understand. And that sense of feeling different and other, and that then became anxiety, was from not being able to work with that. And then as an adult, the moment that I found that like alcohol made the predictive dreams go away, and like the things that I would know, but like weren't necessarily like couldn't really understand how to work with, I was like, oh, this is the magic. This is great. Like, just numb this shit right out, So I think that on one hand, it took away things that I didn't know how to work with, but it also, it totally numbed out the access to my intuition. And so as soon as I started to heal a lot of that, then it came on like full force. And it's a thing that I probably felt the closest to the like best part of me accessing that as a little girl, as a child again. And I was like, oh, and I fully believe, I'm sure you guys subscribe to this too, that like we all have that. It's just a matter of how much we work with it or let it in or access it versus numbing it or shutting it down. You know?
Right. I would agree with that for sure. I mean, and especially, I think, okay, so would you feel, and everybody has difference of opinion as to the paranormal side. And I know you said you don't necessarily work on the paranormal side, even though it sounds like you do.
Yeah, I guess like I just don't, like I feel like you guys are the master, so I'm kind of like I'm like, yeah, I do where I can help, but I'm not like you guys are the
But I feel like that's what's very interesting, and it is in the paranormal world. And when I say that, I'm really only discussing the ghost investigators or the ghost side of it, because paranormal encompasses it all, really, when you think about it. But I've always been a big believer in what our connection is with the other side. And it's not quite the way, this is not going to make me friends. And I apologize to all the investigators out there. But for me, my feeling has been, when you're having these experiences as an investigator or somebody that believes in ghosts, you know, it's not the movies. It's not this thing that is a monster that's coming to get you. And it is usually a deeper lesson about yourself. And I feel like your story and how you sort of blossomed into this amazing Cardsy B reader, intuitive, that's exactly what happened for you, that the other side truly showed up for you to give you the lessons or to help you work through the hard times. Like, I feel like that's what we miss a lot of times in paranormal investigating, that we're so busy trying to catch the ghost, to hunt the ghost, that we don't stop and think about what is I'm experiencing right now and why could I be experiencing it right now? Yeah. And I sort of feel like that's where your story sort of comes into my belief system a little bit, because there it was right there. You always had these gifts. And it took a little bit of shaking up in your life to be like, get rid of all that other stuff so you can take in what really fulfills your soul. Because this is very different than the fashionista life.
Oh my God, totally. And I always say, like, I love and I'm sure you guys get such beautiful feedback and gratitude from the clients, even like Dee Dee was saying, working with like private residents of homes that you're helping. Like, that is so different. No one ever gave me like tearfelt thank yous and like, oh my gosh, this shifted the way my quality of life or the way that I like processed or saw things because of this reading or this interaction in the fashion world. No one was ever like, oh my God, thank you for picking the correct Pantone of coral. Like, you changed my world, you know? No. So like, I'm sure there are some people that like are very fulfilled in that. I'm not trying to like, you know, downplay that, but for me, I never had that. And knowing it's like, and I know you guys like in your work experience this, it's bigger than me. So it's like what I do. That's why I love it so much, because it's so much bigger than me, and being able to help and like allow that to channel through to people that receive healing from it is truly the greatest gift, to be able to do this work 100%. And I agree with you that it was very much through the other side in many ways, in terms of like, you know, my higher self from one perspective, also like loved ones of mine that came through. And that's throughout the book. One of my best friend that passed away of HIV, like, came through so much for me and was almost like, all right, like, I know you're like barely hanging on there, but like signs, synchronicities, things that happened that were very, very abundantly clear. So I very much believe that. And I think that one of the things I think that a lot of people struggle with, and I don't know if you see this with people you interact with, is they're fearful of that connection. And I think that's when it's kind of like, even if it's not a substance shutting it, numbing it down, it's kind of like a mental, like, I don't want to hear, I don't want to know. And I think that the more kind of surrender we have around of like, what is this why is it happening? What is it telling me? Is very powerful, you know?
I would agree with that 100%, because I think, you know, we often, I don't know, do you work in shadow work? You know, when we talk about that stuff, right? Like, again, I think you're right. We busy ourselves, social media, right? Shopping addictions, all these things, TV watching, podcasts, listening constantly, like, right? Anything to get us out of our own head of ourselves, right? To sort of forget about that, kind of get away from it for a little bit. But I think that, I mean, and again, everybody goes into this stuff for very different reasons. You know, Dee Dee got into paranormal. We stumble upon it. Not all of us grew up in a haunted house. That's not how it started for all of us, you know, and for those that it did, that's okay. We all come to these moments though, where I think it does make you stop and think, okay, why me? Like, why can I have these beliefs and systems and somebody, you know, a good friend of mine doesn't have them at all? Like, I don't know, like with you, Dee Dee, do you feel like even some of your friends, do they kind of like they appreciate, or they'll say like, oh, I love that you do that. That's about as far as it goes, right?
I don't think I've ever gotten that.
No, nobody supports you.
Well, I'm not too sure anybody really knows what I do. So
okay. Oh, you don't really talk about it.
No, I don't. I mean, I talk about it with some close friends, but not that much. And it's funny, I will find friends who, when I do tell them, close friends, that they're interested in it, but I yet don't have anybody saying, do you want to pull some cards or interpret my dream and stuff like that. So I'd say I kind of don't have a circle, with me. So it's different for me. It's a different experience.
Yeah.
I don't get the positive feedback, I guess, that you're talking about.
Well, I don't know if mine's positive. It's not negative. It's not, it's almost like that's good for you. And they love that I'm doing something that I love. But, I think, and it is one thing, why Dee Dee and I, we've always said like Mondays for us, or whatever days our show is on, those are our favorite days, to be able to talk openly and freely, and to be able to meet people like yourself, Cardsy B, where it's, you just suddenly feel like you have this safe space to be like, this is what I believe, and what do you do? And, it makes, every time we have somebody that can read a card, Dee Dee is really good at them. I love to pull cards, but I got to be honest, like sometimes having to constantly flip through the book to figure out what the meaning is, so I'm going to ask you, like I ask most readers, how did you memorize? Is it just from reading them every day? How do you memorize what these cards mean?
So for me, like, I feel like it, learning it as a kid, because I bought my first deck when I was, like 10, maybe 11 years old. It's I kind of associate that with the way that kids learn languages. Like, we're less fearful, because as adults, it's like, oh, there's a way to learn. I have to study this. It's more of a linear, logical approach. And I would just play around with it. Like I was such a nerd. I had one little nerdy friend who, I could do that with, and I would make her play games. Like, the card game War, of like, okay, this is why this card is more powerful, because justice is a major arcana, and that's a, so we would like learn in these weird kid-like ways. And I think that made it more organic and more like I didn't put the pressure that I would on myself if I had learned maybe as an adult. As I grew older and kind of dove more into it, that's when I studied things like the astrological meanings of each card, because I'm very interested in like numerology and astrology, because I do a lot with that and do a lot with timelines. So that I studied more from a place of like, I guess, an adult mind. But even still, it was just a matter of like, I would listen to podcasts, I would read books that interest me, but I was never like studying guidebooks, because I think anytime something's like that, it's not fun. Then I'm kind of like, oh, that reminds me of something that feels restrictive and very regulated. What was your process with that, Dee Dee?
With learning to read cards?
Yeah.
I'm still in the process. I do dream interpretations.
Amazing.
So I use like oracle cards, and I just got a deck. It's a dream tarot deck. So
cool.
Because I've never been like really interested in knowing the definitions. I'm kind of lazy. I'm like, well, I'll just look it up when it comes up, because I don't read for other people. Those tarots I do in my dream interpretations, but I'm not doing it. We're not facing each other. I'm doing it for them in my time, And so, but this deck made me interested in learning, because it's such a thorough, like their explanations, they show you the reversed and all the stuff. So that's the first deck that I got where I'm actually interested in actually learning what each one means.
Yeah.
I like Oracle because it's more, you could just kind of make it what you want to make it. And you just look at the card and what does it feel to you? So I'm more like, I guess, free. I don't like you. I don't want it to be a set rule. Like it only means this,
Totally.
I don't, so.
Yeah.
So are the reverse? So this is where too, so many readers are so different. And I get that this would be very interpretative, it's a perspective thing, but there are some readers who absolutely do not read the reverse. And there are some who read the reverse. What is your go-to on that, Cardsy?
Yeah, I do read the reversals, because I like that it just gives more data points. Like, so for me, I'm kind of like, okay, this is there's a slight twist on a reversal versus an upright, and it's not all bad. Like some reversals I prefer, because it's funny. There are people that I'll do readings for, and I don't know if you read reversals of your cards, Dee Dee, but the people will see the reverse and they're like, reversed, is that bad? And I'm like, hold on. Like some of them I actually prefer in reverse.
Yeah.
And it all has to do also with like the question you're looking at and like what the cards are surrounding it, because they're all in conversation with each other. But I do read reversals, and I always like to learn more and more layers. That's the thing I do like about tarot, because I agree with Dee Dee. I'm also not like a rule follower. I don't know if either of you are Harry Potter fans, but I always say I would be Slytherin because I don't really like to adhere to the rules. But I like that there are so many layers of the tarot. So it's like I still feel like I am by no means a master, even though I've read for years and years, because I am very well versed in like the archetypes and the astrology and the numerology, but I know a little bit about the Kabbalistic tie-ins, and I'm always learning more about that. So I think there are so many different layers and so many different, just for, centuries back, of ways that people read and like the things that stand out in the cards. And I like the more that I learn, because then it's whatever pops up at a given time. I'm like, oh, that's what I'm meant to share, or that's what's coming through for this individual person.
So are you strictly tarot?
I am. Yeah. I read I have oracle cards that I love, and I'll sometimes pull them like for myself, or in like if I have one, it's kind of like romance angels. And if people are very, very all about a love, I'll pull like a couple of cards around that. But I'm such a tarot nerd, and it's what I always did. And even though I had many decks, I always went back to the one I read with since I was 10 until I created my own. Cause even with all of the tarot decks I've acquired over the years, I even am very like, I don't know, ritualistic with the ones that I use.
It's like you're sentimental to that particular. Okay. So we had our friend Carly, she reads both tarot and oracle, and her kind of definition was, I felt like she said tarot is very kind of brutally honest, where oracle tends to be a little bit fluffier and makes you feel good. Would you agree with that?
I think that's a lot of people's experience. Yeah, because an oracle, I haven't seen. I mean, it's not like I know every single oracle deck, but they all are very like positive and light energy. And tarot, there's like some dark shit in there. So there's no dancing around a card like the Tower, or like 10 of Swords, where you're like, this, okay, something is like 10 of Swords is something's ending or something needs to end. Let's look at that, So I think that there's a little bit more bluntness, but I don't necessarily think it's dark, but I agree it's blunt and in your face. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
So do you still have your original deck?
I do. And it was one of those things when after I went through like my massive breakdown, my mom, I lovingly call her an emotional hoarder, because she's very neat and clean, but there's like Rubbermaid like Tupperware boxes of like everything ever, of like every Hallmark card and like every like art project I did in high school. So I was like, Mom, do you happen to have, because I had others, but like not that specific one. And she knew exactly where it was, and she mailed it to me. And she's like, aren't you glad I'm a hoarder now?
That's right.
So as soon as I started reading again, I came back to that one until I created my own. And now I do read with my own, because there's just so much that goes into it. Like I hand illustrated it as well. So like there's so much that went into me, like sitting there on the floor with my dog, like illustrating that, like a lot comes through it for me. But I read either with my childhood deck or the one that I created mostly.
I love it. So you drew, so you're the illustrator and the creator. That's amazing. So you're an artist too.
Yeah. So that was because in fashion, I designed. So I illustrated and designed products. So when I first was illustrating this, or when I first came up with the idea, it was actually my best friend. She was like, you should just do your own deck, because that's how I would teach, was because tarot can be very intimidating. I would teach that, like I said, like, oh, like justice is like RBG, because it's about like balancing what's fair and just. And like the Hierophant is the teacher of life lessons and like super soul aha moments. So I made it Oprah. And, but I would teach that way when I was doing small groups. So my best friend was like, you should do your own deck, because it's very digestible, and it's very like people that may be alienated by kind of the older images that they don't understand would get this. And I was like, I don't know. In theory, it's good. So I literally just illustrated it as a teaching tool, and I was teaching small groups and sharing my reads on Instagram. And then a publisher reached out to me and was like, hey, are you interested? And I was like, whoa, because to me, I was like, I'm probably just gonna, and maybe a few people will buy it like on my Instagram. And it's cool now to see that like it's sold in places, and like other readers on TikTok, like these like young kids reading with it. So it's I'm really grateful. But I just did it as a passion project and as a way to explain how I teach.
Oh, I do. And here's a question. I think this is a great question. And I'm sorry, Facebook user, if you don't sign in, I don't know. And I hate not acknowledging you, but do you feel tarot could be used to guide mentally unstable people or depression? Could it help get them and guide them out of depression?
I really do. I mean, that's when I came back to it, honestly. Like I was definitely in extreme depression, and I used it in a way of just one card in the morning of like, what does the universe, my higher self, want me to know today? And coming into that and seeing how it came up was like, oh, I am still connected to my intuition. Like when I felt like I had nothing left going for me and like nothing was working out, I was like, oh, I do still understand that. Like I can see that. And that then would, kind of brought me on to the next thing of like, okay, like now what does the universe want me to know? And then I could look more at specific things of like, how can I move myself forward around this issue? And then start to see, oh, that makes sense. Or I can see how I can do that. So it was for me, I always say like tarot saved my life. There's many things that I implemented and shifted and evolved over that time, but that was really the thing that was free and accessible. And it was the first thing that started to shift things for me.
And, I always find when it comes to something like tarot, and again, I use them very personally. Have I read for people? Sure. I mean, if people see you have a tarot deck, right? Pardon me, they will, can you read? Sure. I do my best, but I always did like using them for personal reasons because it is that moment to stop. It's meditating. It's meditative, right? You take a moment and you're bringing forward what you do know that you are just not, you just can't seem to grasp. That kind of forces your hand, much like Reiki, much like anything that makes you stop for a moment, take a breath. And I do like the card a day. I think that is an amazing way to start actually doing any of that kind of practice, because like you said, it just sort of forces your hand to be like, okay, and it's one step at a time, right? One step at a time. And it does like, it's a beautifully said thing, Cardsy, like to be able to say like, it does, it connects you again. Same, like I feel, I don't know, Dee Dee, if you feel this way, but when you do paranormal investigations, to have even the slightest moment of an anomaly, an oddity that maybe I have a hard time sometimes calling them paranormal, but right, when you have that moment, you almost do kind of have that, like, I am a part of this universe. I am a part of this connection.
Yeah. Right? Everyone matters. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes it real. Can Paranormally Blonde, Cardsy B, do that for people? I'm not sure what you're asking. Can they read tarot to help with depression? I mean, Cardsy, do people reach out to you? I mean, that's kind of a tricky subject right there, because you want to be careful as we're, if you're reading tarot or anything that you help, even in paranormal, we're not medically trained people. So, it can be a tool, as you said, it's a great tool, but how much should people really sort of depend on that?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of that, for like, I see like pulling for yourself in that situation can be immensely empowering, because it's really what's coming through your higher self, the energies around you that you're reading. But putting too much stock in anyone else, like at that time, like I think I would advise to start reading for yourself before that, because I think that that's where it can get a little bit challenging. But I do find it incredibly empowering to read for yourself when you are in that place, for sure.
So for this person, and again, I feel so bad, Facebook user, I just hate saying that, Facebook user, you are a person and I do acknowledge you. Would you advise somebody to do tarot, or would you suggest an oracle card, since they are a little bit more like an affirmation? Which way would you suggest somebody go if they're really new to this or need to help themselves?
Yeah. I think that like, absolutely, it's kind of what you're drawn towards. So if there's a reason that you are drawn towards tarot, and the question, like, yes, I absolutely do. And it's like, obviously I read for people, but I would advise like definitely working with that, like with yourself one-on-one, and seeing how, that resonates before reaching out to any reader, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I would think a tarot reader, Reiki healers, anybody, even a paranormal investigator. I mean, it is much like anything, a hairdresser, a doctor, not everybody is for everybody. You do have to find your match in energy. And, Cardsy, I feel like, well, one, it just doesn't feel, I feel this is very natural little threesome right here. Like this
Yeah.
this is a very nice, the energy, like, and I think sometimes though, right, you can meet somebody and they can be very lovely and you love what they do, but it doesn't match sort of your energy. And so I do agree. I think sometimes doing it for yourself to sort of understand, I guess, how you receive a message, how you interpret a message, because
Yeah.
I think it can be very scary. I've watched friends of mine who have even gone to readers and a little too dependent, I think, a little, it's almost like they can't make any decision.
Yeah.
It's addictive, right? It's
Yeah.
addictive
And
to hear.
I always tell people when they ask me, like, in terms of booking, I advise them to let like minimum of a month pass, because I look at things too, like as from like a Wiccan cycle of 28 days with the moon and like the energies moving in that time. Because more than that, I think can become like a little bit dependent. And also for me, usually the energies around that person are not shifting that much unless massive life change comes in. So even I would like a minimum, and most of my ongoing people, I would say they come anywhere between like once a month, like at the closest, and then like every 6 months or once a year check-ins, because it's kind of like, here, let's take the temperature of the energies, see what's coming through. And then sometimes something major will come up and they're like, oh my gosh, this did happen and I did meet this person. Now I have different questions or like more clarifying questions. Cool. But I think that is one of the things that can be a dependency of where can you then sit with that and allow yourself to be guided intuitively forward, you know?
And I agree. It is hard to find trustworthy people just in
Yeah.
any of the paranormal field. It is a very tough. I don't know that there is, and I don't know, Cardsy, if you have any advice on. I mean, there is really no surefire way to know what you're getting or who you're working with. I mean, you can't. I mean, even the most popular, gone to psychic mediums out there. How do you know?
Yeah. I think that's like, it's exactly what you were saying, Sarah, is like, it's kind of getting like getting to know somebody. Like it's very similar to dating or finding a therapist or anything, where it's like you really have to feel that the energy resonates both ways. And I think that just red flags in general, specifically for readers, is anyone that like tells you that there's a curse, a reason that you need to pay above and beyond, that you need to come back. Because I'm always advising people, sit with this. I tell them, I'm like, I wouldn't book any appointments. Like even when they're like, oh my God, I love this one, can I see you again? And I'm like, why don't you sit with this, see how this plays out? And then at least in a month's time, if you want to book again and things have shifted in any way, let's talk, you know? So I think that people that are like trying to get you to buy multiple like packages, multiple sessions, telling you that something's negative that you need, that only they can fix. Because again, I believe that I am just like a clear mirror of the energies that the person's coming in with and helping them to access that. A lot of people that I read for, that I have for a long time, have said that they have heightened their intuition and that they make decisions a lot more from that place without having to consult, as a result of being redirected back inward and kind of things that have come up. They're like, oh, I knew that things I was getting in the reading, they're like, I knew that, but now that you're saying that, I'm trusting it. And it's nothing that they shared with me, but they're like, oh, that's what I was either leaning towards, or I thought that person was going to come back in, and they did. So they're able to trust that intuitively more themselves. And so that's really my goal, is to kind of loop people back in, because that's what tarot has done for me. And I think anyone that's trying to make you dependent on them in any way, like that's that's a red flag for sure.
It's just like dream interpretation. It's the same way. When you interpret a dream, it's just telling you what you already know, but you needed kind of like that confirmation.
Actually, we all want validation sometimes, right? we all want to know. We might know, but I do Reiki, and I'll be honest, I don't like doing it for myself. I'd rather somebody else take the wheel there, and you do it for me, and I will gladly do it for you. But do you ever, Cardsy, like to go to somebody else to read your cards?
I do. Yeah. I actually, she's like, Zenobia Simmons is amazing. And she also has done a lot with mediumship as well. And she is somebody that I met in New York, and just amazing. And before when I was still in fashion, I met her, and she said, she was like, girl, you have the thing, you shut it down, but you have it. And I was like, because there were things that, and I, to this day, I know that I was successful at a young age in the industry because I was great at forecasting trends. And it was kind of like seeing that in advance of like what the collective is going to resonate with and what's going to sell. So I was always like, okay, like the top selling things, the person that would pick the trends in advance. And that's why people wanted me and hired me. I was known for that. So, I mean, it makes sense. But at that time I was like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. So to this day, her and I are really good friends. She's in my deck as the star card. Cause she's taught me a lot kind of in the vein of the star card, both patience and also divine timing. And so I go to her probably once a year because like I say, like I'll do like a once a year check-in, or if like major change comes up. When I was planning the move to Miami, I checked in with her of kind of like, you know, this is what I'm feeling, anything you see. But yeah, so I do too, because I agree with you. It's like I pull cards for myself, but I don't know if you find this, Dee, like being, because of the work that you do is it's like interpretive and working with oracle decks. It's sometimes harder when the more you know, because I'm like, but I'm wanting to see this, or I'm not wanting to see that. So that's what I'm like,
I agree. Yeah. That's come back to bite me, because I had a friend's daughter she's very young, but she's like 14 and she reads tarot beautifully, so natural for her. And when she was, you know, I'm always doing flowers and happiness for all my readings and stuff, you know, it's all right. And then she came back and gave me the real thing. And, you know, it's one of those, like, you start crying because you realize, I'm not, you know. And so, I agree. You have to go to somebody else, especially if you always want to be positive.
Well, you gotta tap into the dark side to also enjoy the light side, right? It is a beautiful balance. And the person that was asking these questions, that is Joe Fox. I'm glad that you enjoy this, and perhaps Cardsy B would be somebody that would be good for you to reach out to. I think that is, you know, a beautiful, you're just a very easygoing, easy flowing energy. You know, I think sometimes, I think what I'm really digging about this whole thing too is, and it's something I often talk about in paranormal, the caricature of what people think we are, and some of the caricatureness that we portray ourselves to be, right? Like some ghost hunters really take it to that nth degree and dress it, and it's so weird and dark, and, you know, and we're just not. I think I feel sometimes that hampers me a little bit, that I don't play into that style of what people think paranormal is. And Cardsy, I feel like looking at you and listening to you, and I love, guys, seriously, if you don't follow her on Instagram, you will love her daily card. Like, she's always out looking perfect by the pool and pulling her cards. And I'm like, I'm so jealous, but I love this so much. So I'm just going to take it in. Please do it, because you're going to love her card readings. But you don't really necessarily fit. Not that all card readers look like gypsies. No, I'm not suggesting that.
No, I agree with you guys. And it's funny that you say you think it may hamper you, because that's why I love you guys, because I very much love the paranormal space. And like I said, I was an Ed and Lorraine Warren fan from the time I could reach their books and read them. And being from like the Gettysburg area, I've gone on like ghost hunts there and like studied a lot about that land and that area. So but it's such, for number one, it's like very largely like a guy's game, I've found. And there is kind of a persona to it. And you guys are amazing, because you're so good, but like authentically yourselves at the same time. And that's something I have such respect for, because I don't know if you guys felt like this, but like when I started doing this full time, I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to have to like wear like a skirt made of grass and just like photograph crystals? And I'm like, no, I'm still a bougie bitch. Like I still do like fashion, like my pages are pink, you know? But I'm still like me, this human being that I, you know, incarnated as in this life, with the interest that I acquired. But I think that's how I found you guys. Was I was like, oh, I love how you do this so authentically as yourselves and being so skilled at it. So yeah, don't stop that at all. And I think the more of us that show up like that, it gives others permission to enter the space, because a lot of people have that I've worked with have become interested in tarot or in witchcraft, and they're like, oh, you make it not scary, you know? And I'm like, yes, totally.
Yeah, that's the thing. We don't all wear black, even though that is what I am wearing tonight. But we don't all wear all black all the time, right? We all don't have jet black hair, and, you know, wear the dark eye. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think there is this thing, and we are actually on Wednesday, we're doing a special Paranormally Blonde with 8 women to talk about women in the paranormal. And I think one thing that I really want to touch on during that conversation, and I think it goes with this conversation, is, we talk a lot that you just said it's a man's game, but I got to be honest with you, the numbers don't suggest that, Cardsy. The numbers suggest something very different. And I'm going to tell you something, women are harder on women. And I think sometimes when you see a trio like this and you're talking about something such as witchcraft or paranormal, or you clearly just can't know everything you're talking about, because like you're just these blondes that are out there just being girls and whatever. And I think I hear more of the judgment from the female side than I do the guy side. Yeah. Because women consume paranormal and they've got to consume more tarot and I would assume and psychic readings, right? Then
I mean, my client base is like 60-40, like 60% female for sure. Yeah.
Right. So
I'm surprised it's even 40% men. That's surprising to me.
Yeah. So I don't know. It is definitely, I think paranormal is actually very much a woman's world. And if the men are succeeding, well, it's because women are consuming, which has to tell you they're not consuming what women that are out there selling.
Well, because I'm just thinking of like the major shows that are, that I've like watched either growing up or that are still on networks that they're mostly male hosted. Or like the predominant cast is more, the ratio is more male to female. So that's so interesting, but it makes sense that you're like, oh, the numbers don't suggest it, but it's like who's getting the limelight in it. But that's interesting.
It is. When I look at, especially in paranormal, I think, you look at sort of the people that put themselves forth and sort of how they're presenting themselves. And sometimes I'm just like, I'm too old for that. I'm 51. I'm too old to now shave my head into something crazy and, wear black lipstick. I just can't do it. I can't do it, but it doesn't mean that I do love this and it is a passion. And I think there's, the tarot reading, the divination, that stuff, again, anything that gets us to go within ourselves, we all find it differently. I find it through ghosts, that's just for me. I feel, you said you're this clear mirror, and that's it's exactly how I view ghosts.
Yeah.
It's definitely more of what you need to see in how you're experiencing life. Let's touch on numerology, because I have been searching for somebody in numerology for probably months. I've put it out on Instagram, crickets. You don't hear many people sharing this stuff. So how deep do you get into numerology?
So, I mean, it's definitely from a tarot perspective, but I've studied it deeply in association to the cards and tarot constellations. So that's not something I came up with. Mary Kay Greer wrote an entire book on it. That's amazing. That's kind of charting tarot the way that we do birth charts and astrology. So there are certain cards that numerologically are linked to us that follow you throughout your lifetime. Whereas when you do a reading, it's kind of like these are the energies around us at a given point in time. So in terms of numerology, it's like, what are the numbers and the sequences of cards or a series of cards. And then I do chart readings, tarot chart readings for people of like, what are yours? Like you have a soul and personality card, kind of similar to sun and rising based on the numerology of your birth. And then certain cards that are your teacher cards that follow you throughout life that can be they're more like the shadow stuff of what will continue to show up as lessons. And if we don't move through them, it'll be more repetitive of the same thing. Whereas if we do, they'll kind of evolve and help us to grow in the challenges. And then cards that are opportunities. So kind of our core strengths, things that are showing up to help guide us on a soul purpose throughout this lifetime. So I work with the numerology in that way, and the numbers of, birth, definitely the birth numbers of an individual, but also the numbers of a year. We're moving up until into that like 1111 portal, which is really interesting because it's obviously like the 111s are new beginnings. Everyone loves seeing that on a clock. It's like 111 new beginnings, make a wish. But it's also when we add it up for the day is a 4, which is kind of like the foundations in the tarot. It's the emperor. And then for 2022, it's 11 plus 11 plus 2 plus 2 is 10. So it's like the foundation of like Wheel of Fortune of like, how have we evolved and what is that causing causing us to create our new foundation as on the other side of 11/11, which is interesting after Scorpio and the eclipses, because I think a lot of people are questioning that right now. A lot of big changes, whether that's leaving actual things in the physical, like relationships or jobs, or if it's just releasing old patterns and programs that are becoming really clear right now. So I look at numerology around dates a lot, kind of the significance of what that's presenting and how we can work with it.
Cool. I'm going to have to get a reading by Cardsy B because I am fascinated with this time. I love the timeline concept. And I love that you add the numbers, and Rob is saying twos, do follow him. So how does one schedule an appointment with Cardsy B? What do we do to get on your schedule? Are you booked out in years advance? How do we get a piece of you?
No, I'm absolutely, it's funny because I just block chunks of time that I'm unavailable. So I do have things that are usually within the next couple of weeks. And I prefer that people book closer. So I try to stagger my calendar that there are openings always within a couple of weeks, because I think people's lives shift so much. So, I mean, mad respect to the readers that like to book people 2 years in advance. But I think if you're feeling called to get a reading, you probably it's the energies around you soonish. So I usually have availability within a couple of weeks. And I'm at Cardsy B on Instagram. So just CARDSYB, and then it's cardsyb.com. So everything's super accessible on those. I'm on TikTok too, but I primarily use Instagram.
I love that. And do you find the TikTok crowd to be very beneficial to building your followers? Or
you know what? It's like I have loved Instagram. I feel like everyone has their platform that built them, and then you hold gratitude for that. So I went from 0 to 80,000 on Instagram. So it's like that's where my heart is. But I do have followers on TikTok, and I think that like there's a big following for the daily reads. So I do post on both. But Instagram has been my longest term platform. And then I have the podcast Text in the City. And then I have a really cool weekly community on my site called Spellcraft Society. And it's on Thursday nights from 5:55 to 6:55 Eastern. And we go through the energy updates for the week, walking through spells and elixirs. And then there's a whole, like through my site, you have a login that has everything we've gone through, PDFs of the elixirs and spells, and you have access to chatting with the whole community. So it's really cool. And like, so I've been doing that just since October, because there was a demand to kind of go deeper into some of this, literally the spellcraft. That's why it's called the Spellcraft Society, because I would talk about it a little bit in short reels or talk about it in my podcast, and people are like, where are those ingredients? Like, wait, what if I did this? And it was so many, I was being inundated with DMs and emails. And so I was like, I love you guys. And I love people that support me. So I always want to answer. And then finally I was like, okay, I'm going to try to make this as minimal as an investment as possible. So it's $22 a month. You get the first month for free. So, or the first week for free. So if you don't like it, you can opt out, and it's $0. But that goes a little bit deeper into the spell elements, but we do go into energy updates every week. We do vision quest meditations, spells, elixirs. Yeah.
Wow. I do a lot.
Yeah, I'm in love with you, Cardsy B. This is amazing. Oh my gosh. Like, okay, so we have lots of things here to do. We have to go to cardsyb.com or on Instagram and book a reading ASAP. All of us, let's all do it. And let's see how our reading, we'll compare readings. We need to, why 12/12 for your book? Was there a reason why you chose 12/12?
I did choose the numerology of that for like setting up this new chapter for sure. But I also, my 40th birthday is on the 10th. So it's like a little bit of a belated birthday gift to myself.
I love that. So everybody, is it so 12/12? It comes out everywhere. Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, wherever you want to get a book. This is when it comes
Indigo in Canada, like it's all the major booksellers. Yeah.
So everybody get there. I think it's called Saturn Diaries.
The Saturn Diaries.
So let's all get that, and we're gonna all read this book together, and let's try some of the spells and the elixirs. I'm in. I'm committed. I'm committed. We're doing this.
Okay.
Cardsy, this is amazing. You have been truly a pleasure. And I think that I feel like when you're talking about this stuff, it's kind of what you said. There's no, even having to go into yourself to go deep, to dig deep, to find out what you really need to fulfill your soul. You don't, and you went through some really scary stuff, and yet you present it in such a beautiful package that Kudos to you. Kudos to
so
you.
much.
That's amazing. I hope everybody, please support Cardsy B. Please check her out on her Instagram, because that's where I found her. That's where I love her. And you're going to love her daily readings on there. Go to her webpage, cardsyb.com, schedule your reading. I'm going to do that as soon as we get off. And then let's get her book. Dee Dee, I'm excited. We're going to get back to Two Blondes in a Book. We got to read this. We got to do this together.
It's time.
We're in, Cardsy. I love that. Hey guys on the side, thanks so much for supporting us. We see you, we love you, we appreciate you. Cardsy B, love you and appreciate you. You are awesome. Thank you so much. And we will see you guys next Monday.
Bye.